Welcome to UCF Knightline, your source for UCF sports and former player information.
Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Phegley coming to you from the 1148 studios. And in studio with me today is
Trylko. Hello, everyone.
Alrighty, so this is episode number 66. And, we've had some coaching hires this week. We're going to talk a little bit later on with Sharon about that. We're also going to tell you right now that next week we will be live on YouTube with a podcast. It'll be from 7 to 9 p.m., and we're going to take your phone calls, and we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about within reason.
That is, unless one or the other of us wins Powerball.
Yeah.
And then maybe.
I didn't get one number this week.
I didn't check. I bought a ticket. I didn't check. I just know no one
won.
won,
My ticket
so I should
is right
check.
here, and I did not get one number.
You bought more than one number, eh?
Yeah, I bought a $10 ticket, so that's 5
$1.3 billion.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Insane.
Also, I was talking last week a little bit about what we were going to try to do with another live YouTube show. I think for the signing day show, we're going to do Friday, February 5th, and we're going to do it as a live podcast as well on YouTube. And we're going to take your calls for the signing day activities. It's 2 days after signing day, but that's what we're going to talk about on that one. So we're going to have a live show February 5th. It's a Friday, and it's the Friday before the Super Bowl. Obviously, that's, gets in the way on the weekend, or we would have done it then. And Sharon is actually going to join us in studio then as well. And I'm going to see if we can get Kyle. I'm not sure if he's busy that day. He was busy on the Saturday, so we couldn't do that and all that. So it could be 3 of us. It could be 4 of us. But anyway, we're going to have live call-ins that night as well, so that's the way that we're going to do that.
Get your questions ready.
Yeah, so it'll be fun.
It was fun the last time we did it.
Yeah. We'll see next Sunday as well how that is going. So what happened at UCF this week?
A week ago, we were saying we knew there would be coaching hires, and that has happened. Most of our fans know by now former Oregon outside linebackers coach Eric Chinander, UCF's new defensive coordinator. Chinander and Frost have, they worked together over 7 seasons, Oregon and Northern Iowa. Notice the theme here of Frost bringing together people that he has worked with before. Knight's new offensive line coach, Greg Austin, comes to UCF after spending the past 3 seasons with the Philadelphia Eagles. He is a UCFer holding not 1, but 2 master's degrees from UCF, business management, sports management. He worked in Philly with former Oregon head coach Chip Kelly, came to the Eagles after a stint with the Ducks. Marcus Castro-Walker leaves Arizona State to serve as Director of Player Development with the Knights. And we can also welcome Zach Duvall as the new strength coach. He's coming in from Wyoming. What's your reaction to the week of hires? How would you grade it?
I think it's great. The first thing that I thought of, though, out of all this, it's going to be a little bit weird. Did you see the picture that they used for Eric Chinander? It looked like a mugshot. It was awesome. I love that.
Intense.
Yeah, that picture will be ingrained in my head for, and I hope that picture is ingrained. Hopefully they use that one in the program or whatever, and so the opposite team, when they download the game day stuff, will see that picture.
You don't want to see a smiling face.
Yeah,
you want
absolutely.
to see that intense
I think all
scowl.
of them should be intense scowls for everyone. The players should make the intense scowls and all look like mugshots, so can have a little bit of psychological advantage. Anyway, I think that's great that he hired him as defensive coordinator. The only thing that kind of bothers me a little bit is he has no defensive coordinator status before. He's never been a defensive coordinator. Scott Frost has never been a head coach. That it freaks me out a little bit, but I would assume that he knows that defense. If they're going to run Oregon's defense, he has to know it. It's not rocket science. None of this is rocket science. So I guess, everybody, Jeff says later on, and we talked about this, everybody's been a new head coach or a new coach of something at some time. So I don't think we should be too worried. I don't think defense is the huge focus of what this program is going to do. Obviously, Scott Frost being an offensive guy, and we're worried more about the offensive production of this team anyway. If you score enough points, it really doesn't matter what your defense does. either way, if you score more points than they do,
give up
you
41 as long as you score 57.
Absolutely. And I think that's what Oregon has done in the past. I'm not saying the defense doesn't matter, obviously, that because the old adage goes, defense wins championships. But we'll see.
It seems to me that he has putting together a staff that he is comfortable with. He was quoted in an interview with the Orlando Sentinel saying these guys are his friends. He has confidence and trust in their abilities. They've had success along the way, not only Oregon, other locations that they've had success. And you know what's still unsettling, and it's going to take a while for UCF fans? This all represents change. There may not be a more eagerly anticipated spring game and spring camp than this one. You go back a dozen years to when George O'Leary gotten here, there wasn't this anticipation. The program was at a different level. There's excitement now, and I had to laugh. Scott Frost turned 41 this past week, and doesn't it seem like he's the oldest of everybody that's being hired?
Well, yeah,
that's brought down the average age of the coaching staff recently.
Yeah, except for a couple people. But, I've said this before. I think that newer, younger guys identify better with college players. With guys that are 18 and 20 years old, they at least know some of the lingo, in the texting and the Twittering and all that stuff. A younger staff can, see eye to eye a little bit better with the younger players. And I'm looking forward to that. They know what the players want. They know how to communicate with them a little bit better. And that's something, obviously, that we've been missing here for a while. So.
Yeah, a freshness, and you can just feel that. There's anticipation every day about a new hire, and now we're going to get right back into all to the wall now, recruiting season. After this dead period comes to an end, and there's going to be a lot of talk about that. But we still can digest and think some more about these coaching hires, and that's why we've had an opportunity to talk with Jeff Sharon and do a little bit of a deeper dive on that.
Yeah, and I do have some sound here from Scott Frost's press interviews that he did on Thursday of this week, and it's a long clip, but I cut it up and put kind of the most important stuff that he says in there, so some of you have heard this before, but here is Scott Frost talking to the press on Thursday of this week.
Eric's one of the smartest football coaches I've been around. I really feel like I got a good guy from Oregon staff as I possibly could have. Obviously, I'm really comfortable with him and familiar with him, but he's got so much character and so much intelligence. In my experience as a football coach, if you're a smart guy, you can figure out the problems when they arise. And with Eric's intelligence, I know that he's going to be able to figure out anything that comes his way. I already have a pretty tight bond with some of these guys. That's not why I hired them. I hired them because they're great football coaches. I've been around enough places in football that I've been able to keep track of the guys that I thought were exceptional. And luckily, I've been able to get a lot of those exceptional people in here. Greg Austin was vital for me to have a guy that knew our offense from an offensive line perspective so that I wouldn't have to teach it. He knows it as well as any offensive line coach that I could have found. He's also a great guy and really smart, and kids are going to love him. So those are the type of people that if I have around me, it's going to make my life easy. Yeah, I was baptized into quarterback play really by Bill Walsh in my year and a half at Stanford. Mario also learned from Bill Walsh and was trained by Bill. And in fact, I went off and played option quarterback in Nebraska and defensive back in the NFL, and then coached DBs and linebackers and receivers. When it was time for me to start coaching quarterbacks again, Mario is the guy I went to brush up on quarterback technique and fundamentals. That's how much I believed in him, and a lot of what I taught Marcus Mariota and Vernon Adams at Oregon I got from Mario. We're going to add the right pieces whenever it's possible to add them. There might be an ad or two as this semester starts, and Florida obviously is one of the richest recruiting grounds in the country, and I think we'd be foolish not to do the majority of our recruiting right here around home. We want kids to want to come here. To be honest with you, I'm not as concerned if they have 4 stars or 5 stars or 2 stars after their name. I want the right guys. I want the right type of character guys, the right type of athletes. And there's a lot of them around Central Florida. There's a lot of them in the state of Florida and a lot in this region that we can draw from to put together a great team. We're going to do what we do. I think there's plenty of talent on this team to make a lot of strides to get where we want to get. It's going to be a learning process for everybody, and we'll cater a lot of what we do to the talent that's on the team right now. But I got a lot of confidence in the guys in this building already, and we'll keep adding to that group. But there's a lot of talent on this campus right now. I've been blown away by the type of talent that's around here and the type of talent of kids that are interested in us. So I'm looking forward to we're going to have to fast track this a little, this recruiting class, but I think we can put a great one together, and then we'll have more time to build relationships in years down the road. Quarterback's always a priority. If you got a great quarterback, you win, and if you don't, you have a harder time winning. Feel good about some of the guys on this campus right now, and we'll try to make sure that we always have a quarterback that we can plug in and play. I met with each player individually before they left for Christmas break. Told them all to go home and recharge and re-energize and be ready to come back here with a new direction and go to work. And saw a lot of hunger in guys' eyes to get a fresh start and to go back to work to improve this thing and get it back where it was and where we want it. I think a fresh start is great for everyone. Everybody that comes into this program is going to have to earn what they get. You wouldn't want it any other way if you're a competitor. And I think a fresh start after a tough season is something that can re-energize the team, and we're going to try to capitalize on that and get to work and see if we can't make a lot of strides toward where we want to be. This conference is getting better and better every year. Obviously, UCF has been at the vanguard of that in years past. That's where we want to be again. There's a lot of other schools in our league that had great success this year. This conference plays great football, and I think UCF can be in the driver's seat of that with the resources that we have available to us at this school. So that's where we're trying to get.
I like those words from Scott Frost. I like that, he wants to get back to where we were with the Fiesta Bowl and all that stuff, and I like that he understands that there may be players on this team that can do something. There may be hidden gems on this team. I also like, which we've heard around here for quite a while, that it doesn't matter how many stars are behind a recruit's name. It doesn't matter, because you can either coach those guys up to do what you want them to do or not, and he feels that he can.
And he's talking about confidence as he's watched some of the film from last season, and there's going to be a lot more of that. And we know that from games. It certainly wasn't every game in there, but UCF was in games. Remember, they were leading Houston 10-7 with just a couple of minutes before the half, and then a turn, and things just spin out of control. He talked about that confidence factor, and you get the feeling that from his enthusiasm, this new energy, that may be the confidence boost that a lot of these guys need to prove to us that they're better players than that they showed during various points of the previous season.
You brought up something while we were listening to that I want to talk about. You said that a lot of people are worried and think that he's just hiring his friends, but that's kind of how it works when you're a head coach. One of these days, when I'm a head coach, I'm going to hire you. It's kind of the way that it works.
I think the critics who would say that would also say if he'd assembled a staff of people he'd never met before doing an interview of them, what, he hasn't met anybody in 41 years in playing days and coaching? And for those that listen that run businesses or that are managers that hire, we're not talking about hiring your family and friends because they are your family and friends, but if you've worked with someone along the line that has proven themselves capable and you have a new opportunity somewhere and you can pluck that person from another business, another company, you certainly take a look at that. So who listening can't identify with that? And that's what Scott Frost is doing. He's worked with these folks. They have been successful. It's not like he's pulling people from programs that are 0-12.
Right.
He's pulling people that have achieved a level of success. So I think that criticism, it makes me laugh a little bit. That's a real-world activity. People hire people they have confidence in that they've seen excel in other positions.
Yeah, I think that he's got it well, in hand. I think that he, knows what he's doing. I think that he's going to be fine. I'm really excited to see what happens. I'm excited to see all of these guys get a fresh start. He says that everybody is going to get the fresh start. He's talked to everybody individually. These players especially are looking forward to having a fresh start. They want to forget about last year. Maybe not forget, but use last year as as maybe, a little bit of incentive to not ever be in that situation of 0-12 again, so.
Well, when you played, how was previous seasons or previous game utilized as motivation by your coaches, position coaches? How did they talk about that? I mean, he's got to talk about a season just past that's 0-12, but with a completely different regime. He's going to take a look at tape. He's going to meet with players, but there are motivations in there. He's going to be able to say to a guy, if you didn't give up right here, he's going to talk to these guys and get to know them and coach them up.
We used previous bad situations as learning tools. We learned from those, and we did use them a little bit as, a little bit of motivation. That's the way I looked at things. I kept in my mind what I did the last time wrong and tried to go out there and do those things right, just personally. That was I probably motivated myself more than anybody else did, to be honest with you. That's just how I am. I just, looked at the things that I could have done better and went out and tried to make sure, even in practice, tried to make sure I focused on those things and did those things better.
I believe him that he's giving these folks, these players, a fresh start. He's inheriting a lot of players that are going to be on this year's team. Got to make the most of that situation and, as we've been talking about, coach them up and instill that confidence and put them in a position to succeed in a way and perhaps that they did not have as much.
Yeah, people have to remember it takes 3 or 4 years to get everybody that you picked here. You're going to have guys that hold over from every class until then. I think that he's going to pick the best out of those, maybe put some people in different positions, that maybe somebody's a running back that could be a linebacker or whatever, or vice versa.
And that's not uncommon in the college game.
It's not, because you only have a limited number of players, and these players in high school aren't always playing the correct position that they should be. That's another thing that people don't realize, I think, sometimes when they do see a swap. And a lot of these guys in high school were playing both ways. I know I did, always.
What positions did you play?
I was a quarterback in high school up until I broke my shoulder, tore my rotator cuff. And then that was the end of my quarterback days. I throw like a little girl now. But before I had kind of a good release and a little zip on there. But then I played wide receiver and corner and safety. Earlier on, I was a little bit bigger than some guys and, played some offensive line. I've played a bunch of positions in there. But in high school, it's not the position that you may be playing in college. And, this is a prime example. Look at what the San Francisco 49ers did with Bruce Miller.
Yeah, Bruce Miller.
Took a guy that was playing defensive end in college, which in most of the college ranks, the defensive ends aren't even close to the size that they are in the pros. They're the biggest of the big guys most of the time in the pros. They took him and made him a fullback, and he's excelled at that job, which... Yeah, I don't know now. I don't know how this season really played off for that because I honestly didn't watch the 49ers very often. But I'm assuming that he did. I heard that he didn't play as much. But still, it takes a good coach to figure out where somebody should actually be.
And it's not as if, though, UCF hasn't done that in the past. You saw quarterback Jeff Godfrey become a wide receiver.
Right.
And that's the de novo experiment in wide receiver. So there's all kind of players
that's kind of a natural, progression there. But I think that this is all going to be okay. I think it's going to be awesome.
It's exciting.
I cannot wait.
It's exciting.
I can't wait. We've got one more game in college football left to go. The national championship.
Prediction? You know how good we are at predictions.
I think Clemson's going to run away with it.
Do you?
Yeah. I don't think Alabama has a great defense, but Clemson has a great offense. So
I hope it's a good game. We didn't see
too.
Good games on New Year's Eve with those playoff games. So I hope it's a good game. And I, like many, am over the SEC dominance, and so I'd like to see a new face on the block. I like Clemson's coach, Dabo Swinney.
Those two being ranked number 1 and number 2, it was perfect. They're absolutely that. All right, let's go and talk to Jeff Sharon here real quick and see what he thinks about all the coaching hires and what's ahead for UCF.
Let's get some reaction to the coaching hires. Joining us again is Jeff Sharon, the man behind the newest site dedicated to all things UCF athletics. That's blackandgoldbanneret.com. Did I mention that right, Jeff?
Yes, that's correct.
So, what's your thoughts on the coaching hires?
Well, I've been following them. I'm really interested by sort of the history behind some of these guys in their resume and looking back and seeing where they're connected with Scott Frost. I think it's interesting where he's pulling some guys from, for example, when he hired Troy Walters, I think Troy's kind of like his chief of staff at this point. where, I need to go get some, he hired him obviously before the recruiting dead period started up. So we had him in there early and he goes back with his brother in their Stanford days. He's got some guys from his UNI days. The strength coach, was also, I think, part of the Nebraska family a little bit. And then, of course, Eric Shenander, the defensive coordinator, is a guy we worked with pretty tightly at the University of Oregon. So, it's the Scott Frost regime is rather quickly entrenching itself at UCF, which is, I guess, nice to see. They've given him that amount of power, and he's got quite a bit of budget. I think we saw, $2.3 million to spend on assistants. So he's taking advantage of it.
One of the things that I'm excited about, one of the guys personally, is this Greg Austin. Comes from the Philadelphia Eagles, was also, I believe, at Oregon with Chip Kelly. So, for the offensive line, and that's one of the things that we really, really need to work on here. So I'm excited to have a guy from the pros, number one. I believe that they had a pretty good offensive line there in Philly. So what do you think about that guy?
That's a key hire, too, in those positions. And remember, we talked about this before, was the idea that the type of offensive lineman that you need to run the Oregon system is different from the kind of offensive lineman that we're used to. It's not the typical, it's funny, because yesterday I was watching the NFL playoff game, and Ja Reed was out there for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Sure.
And I was thinking, John Reed probably wouldn't be a fit in the Scott Frost offense because the offense is predicated on speed and go, and you have to catch up, and our job is to beat the defense down the field with all 11 guys, essentially. So you have to have a more fit, smaller, faster offensive lineman who doesn't have to rely on his size so much as his skill and his speed. So you got a guy who comes from the Chip Kelly system there. And then also the strength coach, too, came over from Wyoming. How about this, teaching strength at a university that's 7,220 feet above sea level, and then you're coming down basically to sea level. So that's another thing there. And of course, you got to have that stuff on the other side of the ball, too, with Eric Shenander as well, who knows how to coach a defense that's playing on the other side of an offense that's not going to hold the ball for very long and keep your defense off the field. So when you step back and you look at the big picture, the system is forming itself rather nicely, I think.
Scott Frost addressing the media in a extended session on Thursday and told the Orlando Sentinel, quote, "I'm going to love being around these guys," referring to his new coaches, "and the fact that they're my friends is only going to make things better." You get a sense that we're seeing the development of the Scott Frost coaching tree here. People he has respect for, camaraderie with, and they sound like they want to have a lot of fun together at UCF.
Well, remember, he's going to be part of the branch of the Chip Kelly coaching tree, too. So, we're seeing the branches kind of grow off of this offshoot, right? And let's face it, no matter who UCF would have hired as the head coach, if it was Scott Frost or it was somebody else, the coaching business, as we know, is extremely small. It's smaller than the broadcasting business. So, you're gonna if you got a guy who gets a new job like a Scott Frost, who's a young assistant, he's going to latch on to the guys who, and you could probably see the conversations. Hey, where he's like, "Hey, Troy Walters, one day if I get a job or if you get a job, a head job, let's hook up together and let's actually make this our thing." And that works in every business as well. Because one of the things I think that's underrated these days, and we're starting to see it come up a lot more, not just in football and sports in general, but in all industries, is chemistry and fit, and those kinds of things matter. And you get good chemistry with guys that and you think are smart, and I think that's what he's done here.
UCF has not updated their website for the coaching staff yet, so the guy that I'm trying to think of is quarterback's coach.
Mario Verduzco.
Yeah, and he goes back quite a ways, and Scott Frost said that he learned from him, and when he went to coach quarterbacks and all that. So at Oregon, as part of the offensive coordinator, this guy is a quarterback coaching guru. He's had quite a few names in the NFL and, other places. What do you think about that hire and him?
It tells you something that Scott actually hired Mario relatively early in the process. I think he was on top of the first two guys, Ryan Hell and Troy Walters. I think Verduzco was the third guy Scott hired, and it was only a couple of days later. And that tells you the emphasis that Frost puts on, what the quarterback is going to have to be able to do in his offense. I think he also said in the Sentinel interview that he's already talked with Justin Holman a bunch of times, and of course you can probably infer from that Mario Verduzco has met with him a couple times. It's an entirely different way of playing quarterback from not just what we've seen at UCF, but probably what Justin Holman and the other guys on the roster are used to. It takes a really smart guy to sort of break things down and make the offense digestible for somebody who is walking into an entirely new thing and wasn't one of your recruits, too. That's the other part that's going to be just so they're kind of fitting the square peg into the round hole a little bit. But if what we're seeing about Mario Verduzco is true, he really is that kind of quarterback guru who goes way back with Scott Frost, I have no reason to suspect that we should not see some pretty good production from just Holman. I mean, there's going to be growing pains, and whoever it may be, Holman or if Tyler Harris sticks around or whatever, there's going to be growing pains, but there are going to be some good things, and that's what I'm hoping to see. Frost talked about in that Sentinel interview as well during the media session about these guys need to get their confidence back. I think that's the most important thing that they can do right now in this year, in this upcoming year. You're playing with a lot of guys who you don't, aren't really your guys. So you got to try and get your confidence back. You recognize that there's some talent there, but maybe it was misutilized. The more you can do to get these guys just kind of thinking in a positive direction with every game. I mean, that's going to be, I think, the biggest task that Scott Frost and Mario Verduzco and all the other coaches have ahead of them in the spring and heading into the summer.
You used the word growing pains. A friend asked me or said to me that he was concerned that Frost wasn't hiring people with a lot more experience than what they'd brought, as a younger staff. Concerns on your part at all that this may be a big learning curve for Scott Frost running his own program, or do you get the sense that there's good energy with these hires? They have a camaraderie, they know one another, and that they're poised to hit the ground running more than some apprehensive types might think?
Well, of course, there's some concern on it, but, my take on that is, every head coach everywhere has been a first-time head coach somewhere, right? Nobody comes in knowing exactly how to be a head coach from the very beginning. I mean, look at, now, listen, I'm not comparing Scott Frost to Bill Belichick, but Bill Belichick in his first 2-3 years in Cleveland was, I think, below 500. And he started his first year in New England. He was 5-11, and he was 0-2 in year number 2. And then all of a sudden, Drew Bledsoe gets hurt, and in walks Tom Brady. So there's going to be a learning curve anytime for a first-year head coach. He's going to make mistakes. That's fine. But when you look back at Scott Frost and the people who he has played for, who have taken him under their wing, you're talking really, really smart dudes. You're talking Chip Kelly. You're talking Bill Belichick. You're talking Bill Parcells. Remember, Parcells drafted him when he came into the NFL. The UNI program that he was at was a very successful program. Still is in Division I FCS. Year or two under, I think, John Gruden. So there's a little bit of, all these guys are kind of a mosaic of your past experiences. Not to mention, of course, Tom Osborne and Stillwell. You're kind of a mosaic of your experiences in football. And he's taken a little, and he told me, when I talked to him when he was hired, that, you take a little bit from everybody. That's a nice list of guys to be taking stuff from, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think that you can learn a lot from guys like that. So, another name that's been mentioned as a defensive line coach is Brady Hoke, who was the ex-head coach at Michigan, which that's kind of a big name. Have you heard anything about that?
No, I haven't heard anything about Brady. Well, I thought that Brady Hoke was in line for another job, actually, but
he is, and I think that's what's holding Scott Frost back from hiring him, but it sounds like they wanted him as a defensive line coach for some reason, that he was being mentioned in those circles.
I think it might be one of those things where it's like, hey, listen, if you don't get a job that you want, and you're not, nothing comes open that you're interested in, come down with me for a year and stay in the game, and then wait till the right job opens for you. As opposed to maybe going into television or something like that. But I personally haven't heard anything on that. I would caution UCF fans to beware of, here's this really good name. Well, if they're a familiar name, that doesn't necessarily mean that they might be the best person for the job. And if we hire somebody else, that doesn't mean that person won't be just as good, if not better, at that job. So would Brady Hoke be a good fit? I don't know. I mean, he would be an interesting name, but also, how long would he stick around? That's the other thing, too.
Yeah, this was mentioned on the Dungeon on the UCFsports.com. I believe it was Thursday they were talking about this. That there were multiple sources saying that this could be a hire within the next, week or so. And, I mean, it is a little bit weird, for a guy to step down from being a head coach of a massive program, to do, not to step down because he's not right now, but anyway.
I thought that Brady Hoke is not a bad football coach. I mean, Michigan's a really tough place. I mean, we've seen like the last few guys that have come through there. Really, Jim Harbaugh was kind of the only guy who could get those donors under control. People forget how good of a football coach Brady Hoke was at I believe,
and a
Miami
recruiter as well. And that was one of the things. This is the quote here. Brady Hoke, former Michigan head coach, was the name I heard. Came back to me after some poking around. It's been something that has been said for a little while, and he would come in as the defensive line coach and potentially a recruiting coordinator tag. So we will see. But he has also obviously been mentioned for some head coaching jobs and some defensive coordinator jobs. So we'll see.
Yeah, there's some other programs I think that I think Brady would be a pretty good fit. And I forget, San Diego State was the other place that Brady was at. So,
yeah. So. The rumor mill, of course, at this time of year is what it is, so we will see. Right. You never know. So we didn't know that we were going to get Scott Frost. He came out of the blue, so, there's a couple positions here that are open still. We still don't have an offensive coordinator, so who knows where that's going to be coming from. There's only one game left to be played in college football this year, and that's the national championship. So if he's waiting on someone that's on one of those staffs, I don't know. You never know.
Well, that's one of the other things that's interesting is I think Scott has said before that he wants to call the plays. You could either hire an offensive coordinator who's going to essentially run things on the sideline while Scott's paying attention to the defense and making decisions there, or Scott may not hire any offensive coordinator. Yeah. Now that would be a tall order, I think, but that
especially in your first year of head coaching, I don't know if that would be the greatest idea.
But then again, I haven't been a football coach. I don't know. I know just as much as anybody out there except the people who are in the building. That could be a tough job, but it doesn't mean that he can't handle it. Other coaches certainly have.
All right, Jeff, tell us a little bit about your website and what's going on over there.
All right, well, I'm over on blackandgoldbanneret.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at UCF_Banneret. Put up over the winter break, I put up a couple features that I worked really hard on. One was on former interim AD, still in the building though, Brad Strickland. And I've actually known Brad for a while from the work that I did with UCF volleyball. He was the sport administrator there, and he was kind enough to grant me an interview, and we talked about his time as the interim AD and what that was like for him, keeping the trains running on time while Danny White got himself down here. Now that Danny's full-time, it was interesting to look back at that. And also I got another feature up there on now former UCF volleyball assistant Michelle Chapman, who joined Todd Dagenet in his first year and is one of the best assistant coaches in the country, and she's actually saying goodbye to UCF. She's moving out to San Diego, but I did a little tribute for her out there. And we've got some other things, too. I'm keeping an eye on basketball. Eric Lopez, of course, a buddy of ours, is going to be providing us with some softball coverage. And we're going to be warming up towards the spring game. So keep an eye out, blackandgoldbanneret.com, UCF_Banneret. And you can follow me on Twitter also at Jeff_Sharon.
All righty. Well, we thank you for joining us, and your insight is always appreciated.
Guys, thank you for having me on once again, Andrew and Trace. I really appreciate it. And the cold front's coming in. It's starting to feel like wintertime here. And then all of a sudden it's spring, and then that means that's football.
Absolutely. I can't wait.
Thanks, fellas.
All right, some new hires, but out with the old. Some see-yas this past week. Former defensive line coach Lorenzo Costantini. He joins former Knight Tyson Summers staff at Georgia Southern. By the way, if UCF is now Oregon South, Georgia Southern is UCF North. Is that what that is? Former head strength coach Ed Ellis joining Kirby Smart staff at Georgia. Same for Scott Sinclair, former associate director of strength and conditioning prior to a 3-year stint that he had at Marshall. Former Knight football player and director of player personnel Mike Buscemi will not be a part of Scott Frost's staff.
It does look like, though, the couple people are going to be
Sean Beckton
and
Travis Fisher,
and I think as a GA or whatever, Kevin Smith. It hasn't been totally confirmed yet, but those are the people that we've kind of heard about sticking around. So
you get the feeling that if he's working with these guys over the last couple of weeks, that there's going to be a role for them, and it's a nice bridge from on recruiting and previous seasons. There's some continuity there. And, I'm a big fan of Sean Beckton, a UCF player. His son played here, longtime coach. So
yeah, those are all guys that most of us anyway, would like to see around. So what about the Knights in the NFL playoffs this week? We've got a couple in there, right?
Yeah, some guy named Ja Reed and Kansas City Chiefs.
What a
moving
game!
On.
What a game that was! And Ja Reed actually came in to take over for one of the offensive linemen. They shifted him around. He plays a lot of positions. I think he played right guard this game actually. So they moved him around a couple times, but we went in there, and I'm a huge Kansas City Chiefs fan. If y'all don't know that.
If you don't know that, this must be the first time you've ever listened.
Well,
you have mentioned it.
It could
before.
be. It could be the first time they're listening.
But he moves on in the playoffs, and Kansas City now goes where? They go to New England?
New England, yes. I'm not sure what day that's going to be, but earlier...
Got to like their chances.
Earlier on, Josh Robinson, we saw him with Minnesota playing earlier. Josh Sitton's playing right now.
Green Bay not looking very good.
No, we're kind of watching that game as we speak. And also, we're watching this other game on another channel over here. It's a basketball game, or at least that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a basketball game. We are watching UCF play number 15 SMU in basketball. And at this point, they just took the score. Oh, there it is, 78-61. So they're hanging in there with them. They are. When was the last time we played a team like number 15? When was the last time we played a highly ranked team like that? It's been a while.
Yes.
And I believe, that I'm not a huge Donnie Jones guy, a guy of saying positive things about things like that. But I think they're hanging in there. I thought it was going to be a lot worse, I should say.
I don't know. Feels like a game that they were destined to lose. They do start the season off 2-0. And if you look at that schedule, they needed to beat East Carolina.
Was that surprising to you that they started off 2-0?
I thought that they could win at East Carolina, but that they might lose, and that they nearly did. But that's a game you want to get. Boy, they had a 16-point lead with South Florida the other night at home. Let that whittle down to 1, and then they took control towards the end. So 2-1 after 3, return home. The schedule's sort of funny, I'll tell you. East Carolina on that road, a conference opener, and then they play them just back. The season series will be over with them very quickly. And I don't know how the American decided its scheduling, but to schedule South Florida in a midweek game when students weren't back, a little over 3,000 at CFE Arena on a game that should be a greater rivalry game. And then we return the game there, and it's a midweek game. So it makes it difficult for fans of each program to hop on I-4 and catch a game midweek. So I'm not entirely sure why the American scheduled that. But they'll lose to SMU to fall to 2-1. And then East Carolina comes back on Saturday. So still an opportunity in the early part of the schedule, this setback notwithstanding, to be possibly 3-1 after 4.
Yeah, some other games going on today in the men's basketball arenas. Cincinnati earlier beat South Florida, thank goodness. South Florida is 0-4.
Yes, they are.
In the American.
So there's that.
Cincinnati beat them 54-51, and then Tulsa kind of handily beat Tulane 81-67.
Tulane also 0-4.
Yeah.
East Carolina's 0-3. Now they're just going to be 2 teams without a loss in conference play. SMU will move to 4-0. SMU's boldly proclaimed that they're going to win every game this year.
Did you know that UCF before today would be number 3 in the American? Number 3.
I don't see that happening for the AAC tournament that comes here in March. But we'll take third seed if that were to be the case. Houston's the other team without a loss.
They still have, a better record, at least before this game, than Connecticut. When was the last time UCF had a better record than Connecticut?
It's early. It's early.
It is very early.
It's early.
All right, how about some news and notes? And now, news and notes from the world of UCF sports.
Women's basketball continues to struggle, dropping games in the previous week to East Carolina and South Florida. That dropped them to 0-3 in the American, 3-11 overall. Now, Sunday, as we record, they are approaching the half at Tulane, UCF trailing by 7, 35-28. Tulane's 11-4 overall, but a loss here would drop UCF to 0-4, 3-12 overall. Next up, home Wednesday night at 7 against Temple.
Sophomore Monica Mattis from the women's tennis makes a singles list of the Oracle ITA Southwest Regional Rankings at number 20. Mattis went 10-2 this past fall. The spring season opens up on January 16th with a 3-day UCF Quad Tournament. North Texas, Rice, and FIU are coming to the UCF Tennis Complex.
Jenny Maurer is the new associate head coach for volleyball, coming to the Knights after spending the past 5 seasons at Bradley University in Illinois. Maurer replaces longtime assistant Michelle Chapman, who recently left to get married and moved to the West Coast.
Men's tennis, scoring several singles and double wins over the weekend during the UCF Spring Invitational at the UCF Tennis Complex.
Men's golf posts the best single-term grade point average on record by a men's team for the just-completed fall 2015 semester.
Senior forward Haji Berry making a name for himself at the 2016 Adidas MLS Player Combine in Fort Lauderdale. Berry's getting attention ahead of the MLS Super Draft in January. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, we might have back-to-back players taken in one of those MLS drafts, so that would be good. Mario Williams last year, taken by Montreal. We had an opportunity to talk with him during the season.
Very, very cool. The programs are starting to get people, into those other leagues, into the pro leagues, and that's awesome.
Well, we saw that with women's soccer, the professional league. There was a UCF women's soccer player signed there, and some guys in the MLS. So it's not just about the NFL. It is about other leagues, as you say.
Yeah, lots and lots of guys in the NFL, and I'm sure we're going to have plenty more. And that's great. I love to see these guys. I love to see them making money and playing, the game that they love at a higher level. Alrighty, I think that's going to do it.
Live next week.
Live next week at 7 on YouTube. You can find that on our webpage, UCFKnightlinePodcast.com. This is Andrew Phegley.
I'm Trace Trylko. Go Knights!
Charge on.
UCF, charge on to the field. With our spirits, we'll never yield. Black and gold, charge right through the heart. Victory is our cry, B-S-E-T-O-R.